Hey everybody, Jansik here, and as promised, I'm here with another video. Today we'll be discussing some ships as far as the South Park fandom goes, and as you can see, I got my little Kyle here to help kind of set the mood, along with some cosplay that I tried to accumulate over the years. Anyway, if I seem a little bit distracted, just because I'm in the middle of activating a phone, so bear with me here. I also have some notes I'll be referring to throughout the video. Also, we're not going to be discussing every possible ship just because there's literally like dozens of character combinations as far as you know, poly relationships and stuff that's not very popular and stuff that's kind of side characters that don't really get too much of their own screen time as much as the main characters do, as well as some newer characters. Actually, that reminds me, I need to put that on the list here. And also, as you can tell by my outfit, I am a little bit, biased with my ships or whatever. I love shipping Kyle with like a whole bunch of people for various reasons that I'll get into as the video progresses. So anyway, let's kind of get into it. First thing I want to discuss is kind of the surprise fact. Well, not really surprise. It was surprising enough to me about treat if I can talk at all. It's been a long day. Craig and Tweak actually being canon, which I thought was um it's not that they were like my OTP or anything like that, but I can really see why the creators went with that and why they just kind of decided to go with it. I mean, it was essentially kind of canon to start with, the way that the fandom was kind of introducing it in their own perspective. So to see like actually the character development between the two, which if you've gone on Pinterest, you've probably seen a ton of the fan art of, oh, they went from being pitted against each other to kind of being best friends to now they're in a relationship, and just that's awesome. Good for them. Um, but also, it was amazing that it was also canon that there were a lot of Kaiman moments, which, if you see my previous videos, I have mentioned like in passing that I'm a huge Kaiman fan. Um, love shipping Kyle and Cartman. I love it just because now in one of my videos, like when I was discussing Invader Zim ships, I did talk about how I did not like it when people shipped characters that hated each other just for the sake of having two people that hated each other put together. Now, with Kyle and Cartman, I give a bit of a pass because there are a lot of moments where it shows a mutual respect between them. Also, the Imagination Land movie, which if you haven't seen it, there's actually a scene. Try not to give too much away, but at the same time, the movie's been out forever, so you should have seen it by now if you're in the fandom. Um, but there's a scene that most common fans are familiar with, more than familiar with, because it's super emotional and devastating, where Kyle actually almost dies. And if you haven't seen it, I won't get into super detail of like how exactly that happens. But Kyle actually almost dies, and Cartman actually has a breakdown. And then he saves it later on by just stating, "Oh, now that he's not actually dead, he can do this thing for me." And I'm not going to get into the vocabulary of what exactly it was, but everyone who's seen it knows what I'm talking about. Um, I just don't believe that that breakdown was an act. Like, you cannot convince me that it was. And also the whole thing of like when Kyle's family's moved to San Francisco, and Cartman was the one that convinced Butters, hey, help me go save Kyle. I'm going to actually go into the city and risk my life. Now I need you to keep it a secret. Like, just, there's a whole bunch of evidence where it's just the relationship works. Even if there's a lot of sadistic moments and it wouldn't necessarily be the most healthy relationship, like you can tell that Cartman actually thinks an awful lot of Kyle, and you can tell that Kyle wants to see Cartman as a decent person, which is why he keeps doing all these different things with him as far as like fundraisers and scams and all this fun stuff. Um, Moving on, a lot of people really like to ship Stan and Kyle together. I've seen some cute one shots. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen some cute fan art. Like I get why people do it. I don't like to ship them myself, mostly because I don't really like Stan all that much, especially since his 10th birthday. It's just it seems like the more we see him, the more he becomes like his dad, and not in the most entertaining sense, but more in the very, like when Randy's kind of tuning in like his PC moments and his know-it-all moments and his whole I'm speaking for the town, for the country, for the human race type of thing, and just I'm not into it. Stam has some redeeming qualities, sure, but I can really only see him with Wendy because she's such a strong figure that it doesn't matter what Stan tries to do, she's gonna cancel him out. Um, she'll be able to call him out on his shit and say, "Hey, no, that's a dumb idea." And which is why I think Randy and Sharon work to a large extent, is just because Sharon, for the most part, either says, "I don't fucking care," or "You're a fucking retard." Um, but at the same time, they're married and they did get together under different circumstances. So I think she goes along with a bit more of the nonsense than Wendy does, just because of how, that dynamic and how they've developed over time. But I can really only see Wendy with Stan. As far as shipping anybody else with Stan, I can't get into it. I feel like where he's at right now in his character, he just has a lot more growing up to do before I can picture him with anybody else. Um, Going on to Kenny, the next of the main four boys. Kenny, I know that he gets shipped with Butters a lot. Not against it. I think it's cute to its own extent. I don't really see how it would really develop too much in the show. I do see a lot of fan art as far as like the whole Mysterion and Professor Chaos thing. That's cool. I mean, I get that. I see a lot of the whole thing of Kenny's very sympathetic, and he's the only person that Butters actually really has any respect for once it comes down to it. Um, with Butters actually having a breakdown in one of the episodes, saying just like the only decent person here is Kenny, because he's not a total piece of shit. I don't remember exactly his phrasing for it, but it was along those terms. And so, I kind of see it. I like it. It's not an OTP of mine, but I do like it. I also see Kenny getting shipped with Kyle a lot. And it makes for good fan art. I can see it to an extent of where, um, Kenny and Kyle, they're friends. They've interacted with each other so much over the years that Kenny and Kyle like would become comfortable with each other. So a relationship developing from that would be believable. Kyle seems like the kind of person that if he was going to develop a relationship, it has to be with somebody that, he was essentially very close to or had become close to or whatever, just because he's been burned in relationships so many times before. That being said, that's why I end up being Kyle with David, especially since David's been introduced. They had a really good friendship pretty much right off the bat. Um, no, they're really cute. Every time I see fan art or read fan fiction, it's just David has that personality that's just it's very different from Stan's. He's a supportive character, but at the same time, he has that super best friend potential, which I don't know why they keep calling each other super best friends, but whatever. That's super best friend potential where he's gonna call Kyle out just like you're being a little over dramatic. No, why don't we do this? This is more sensible, and also having the whole thing of just um if he was going to be in a relationship with Kyle, he has that same like flair in his temper, while at the same time not being too out of control. Cartman, when he gets angry, he gets super sadistic and manipulative and all this fun stuff. Um, David has this way about him where he's not super out of control, but he still knows a way to get it done in a way that's going to get his point across, which is similar to how Kyle gets his shit done. The difference is that Kyle is very scared of the repercussions. I want to say like he's a people pleaser and that's why he pulls back, but no, I think he's just scared of getting caught by his mother. Um, Moving on. Person I really like to ship Kyle with, especially lately, I've been writing a lot of fan fictions for this one, is Kyle and Token, or To Kyle is the ship name, I believe. I've also seen quite a few where he gets shipped with Jimmy and Craig, and those are a bit different dynamics. The Kyle and Jimmy, like I don't mind it. It's cute. It's mostly, but I can see the potential of more stuff being done. I think people are just kind of afraid of writing it, and I can kind of understand that to a certain extent. We've only seen like so much of Jimmy, And not all of it has been interactions with Kyle, so you kind of have to like make it up as you go. Um, Kind of the same when it comes to Token, though he has had some interactions as far as like the the Honey Boo Boo just episode thing where Cartman was getting the mobility scooter. Um, you had the episode where Kyle was, portrayed as gay just because Cartman was spreading rumors, and so Token thought that Kyle was hitting on him, even though it was about Nicole, and just, you know. So there's a lot of fun uh background to kind of play with. With Kyle and Craig, they've interacted a bit, like the pandemic episodes. That was fun. No, I don't know. That was a trip. That was like a bad dream. Um, I've seen most of what happens between Craig and Kyle as being like Yandere Craig, where Craig is like super sadistic and hates Stan, and that's why he wants Kyle or something along those lines. And I've read some really good works for it. Um, but the thing is, there's not a lot of cuter or more innocent pieces with them. So it's not really a ship you can get into unless you're prepared for like the huge emotional, whiplash that you have to go through with every little fan fiction. Speaking of emotional whiplash, I've seen a lot of that with Damien and Pip, who, we don't really hear much from anymore, if at all. But the whole thing of, you're essentially good and should be an angel, and I'm the son of the devil, and this whole thing. Not a thing I try to get into. Another thing with emotional whiplash, the Kristoff and Gregory, not into it. I can see why people do it, not into it. They're both very toxic. And I don't necessarily like the idea of two toxic people coming together. You can kind of play them as a power couple, but I don't know. I do ship Kristoff with Kyle. Big surprise there, right? But with Kyle being a hacker and Kristoff being a mercenary, it kind of fits. And that's kind of the whole thing I think about with Kyle and Kenny. Not necessarily Kenny, but Mysterion. Because as Mysterion, Kenny has gone to Kyle for help on several occasions. With Kyle even pretending to be him just so he can get out of trouble. So there's that. I know I'm talking mostly about yaoi ships, just have to get used to that because that's mostly what I write. But Corbin and Heidi, I know that that's become more of a thing with the recent seasons. Not into it, too toxic, don't like it. Just Heidi's too nice of a girl. I feel like she has a lot more of developing and finding herself and all that fun stuff. I really do wish that Bebe got a little bit more love just because when she was first developing in one of the very earlier episodes, she did make the comment of, I don't want boys to just be obsessing about my breasts. I just want to be recognized as smart just because I'm smart and not because people think I'm pretty, so they call me smart, and that sort of thing. Um, Toxic relationships. Just somebody too nice like Heidi or Butters I can't see with Cartman. And I know that they're kind of a thing like in the fandom, and I don't ugh. Um Pairings like Clyde and Kyle or Token and Clyde might have some potential. I don't know. I guess I don't really know enough about Clyde to like really like him or dislike him. I mean, like some things like the fact that he's very sensitive. He's like a huge crybaby, which is kind of like a whole thing of just like that's why I don't want to mess with him, just because he's way overly sensitive. And I get that he's a kid, but when you're trying to mess with him, even as an aged up character in a fan fiction, like it's hard to do anything with them. Um, Ike and Kyle, I know is kind of a thing. I've written a couple things for it. I'm actually in the middle of one that reviewer inspired. Um, I give a free pass to this simply because they're not biologically related. Not that I have a problem with fan fictions that want to do incest, go nuts, just do what you want. But I give Colin Ike a free pass because Ike is a very sure person. He knows what he wants. He knows exactly what he wants to do, how to do it. He has become sexually active in episodes, so it's believable that he would develop kind of early and just kind of catch on. Um, yeah, so free pass. They're not biologically related. You can still get your incest kink, even though it's not technically incest, but it still has the phrasing of such. So kudos. I don't know. The South Park fandom really does have like a whole plethora of characters that you can kind of play with. So no matter what kind of kink or ship or whatever that you're into, chances are you can go down the list and there's somebody there, some sort of ship that matches up with what you're looking at. Which is part of the reason why I wanted to discuss it in a video. Just because I could honestly do like a 10-part video, probably just discussing each ship and pros and cons of like each one. But I don't have the energy for that. I really don't. Um, Mostly just to start a discussion about it, just because, the new season is ongoing and people are starting to get into it with the spandme.com or whatever, where you can like see like how much of each character you are is going on right now. Um, I don't remember the results I got. I know like it was a very weird mixture, but anyway, so that's all I wanted to discuss for this video. Thank you so much, you guys, for watching my last video of Not the US number 3. Feel free to check out my video on Invader Zim ships. If you have any other suggestions about other ship videos you want me to cover, feel free to comment. I'm going to be posting an update video soon discussing Hiccup and Eret from the How to Train Your Dragon series. So feel free to stay tuned for that. I know that that video, when I did it a few years ago, it became, moderately popular compared to other videos on my channel. So hoping to get that kind of going so I can figure out who else is into that ship. If you have any other suggestions as far as like shows, books, movies, freaking whatever, I'm gonna try and post some videos as much as I can just to be a little bit more consistent. Anyway, better get out of these notes so I can actually see what the hell I'm doing. No, don't save. I don't need it. Um, anyway, so thank you so much, you guys. Stay fan sick, and I am going to try and post a video within the next couple days. So feel free to comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. All right, bye, guys. Hopefully, I can actually end this stream without being too much of a pain. Yes, and